Okay, so this particular rant and raving stems from sort of a memory that I have, and also several recent experiences recurring experience that I have. Back when I was first going to the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, I went there as a graduate student in musicology. And one of the very first things that I was asked, and my colleagues were asked in our first meetings of the Introduction to Musicology seminar, was, is musicology a science? Is musicology a science? And didn't quite realize how I think that's really very, very interesting. Is musicology a science? And I also have several memories from there of, attempts by some members of the faculty to look as much like scientists as possible, to the extent of strapping calculators to their belt buckles and wearing them around like, oh, I don't know, like maybe some sort of a Smith and Wesson peacemaker, almost. And I find that very interesting. That's an interesting concept. The implication was that this must be considered. This must be some kind of science. It has to be a science. Science. And it's really quite fascinating. And I've also and also later on in times, like looking through various publications on what's called post-tonal theory. I'm thinking, like, say, in the backs of various volumes by Ron and by George Pearl, people like that. There are unending road. What seem like, I mean, they're there for a reason, but there's a long, long list of numbers. As if it's like, it's like, well, they smacks like the reporting of data in some kind of laboratory report. Once again, this need to be somehow a science, and particularly sciences that have a whole lot to do with numbers, digits. Excuse me, clearing my throat. And that's really very interesting. And I've also experienced this in various ways, to varying degrees, as a teacher, being encouraged to adopt a laboratory type, like do this like they do it in the sciences, like they do it in the lab. It's almost like laboratories are almost like chapels. They're chapels with private devotions to the great God science is happening. And I just think that's very interesting. And this must be a science. Ding, bust it. It's got to be somehow related to the sciences. Glory, 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 science. Glory, 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 numbers. Glory, glory, glory. Because after all, numbers are our be-all and end-all. Yeah, like numbers save the day. Well, whenever I hear stuff like this, I'm reminded of something that a very, very distinguished statistician named Kenneth Haley who I had the great pleasure of meeting and taking a class from, at one point very wisely put it that, you know, figures can't cheat, but cheaters can figure. Figures can't cheat, but cheaters can figure. Right? I think that's an interesting point. You know, the ability to manipulate digits is somehow seen to be like it's almost a so what? Why does something have to be a science? And so far as that goes, what is science? That's a good question. What is a science? What does that mean for it to be a science? Right? And I looked this up a few days ago in one of my dictionaries, and it's kind of interesting that there are a number of connotations to the word science. And one of those is that a science is a specialized subsection of the field of general knowledge that deals with a particular subject and or sets of related subjects. Right? It's a subfield of knowledge that deals in more detail with some aspect of the world, you know, what we're seeing, or whatever, you know, what I'm talking about. You know, say for instance, astrology, no, not astrology, but astronomy is the science of it can be thought of as the study of extraterrestrial bodies, like the moon, planets, things like that, right? And archaeology is a science of studying ancient cultures, you know, et cetera, et cetera. Or paleoclimatology, right, is that subfield of study that deals with looking for and interpreting evidence of the climate, the world's climate, as it was millennia ago. Right? It's that. And isn't that, and I think that that's a very good way of putting it, science. And notice that that definition does not imply any umbilical cord relationship between things that are worth studying and numbers. It's got to have a number to it. Got to have a number. Stick a number on it. That's something you can interpret. You know, sort of like the old joke, like 42. Somebody asked a computer, like, what's the answer to God, life, and the universe? And it sat there and it's finally spit out the number 42. You know, digits. Figures can't cheat, but cheaters can figure. And I'm not saying that numbers and the study of numbers and the use of numbers aren't important. They are. But to deify them, to numbers, just like a lab, glory, pass the flask, you know? No. Oh, I find that interesting. Numbers. Digits, science, as a subfield of general knowledge that deals with specific subjects, has nothing whatsoever to do with numbers necessarily. Now, that is not to say it's not a good thing to occasionally apply, like particularly the scientific method. Oh, you know, to say like you know, ear training students, to run them through, to assess numerically, you know, how good they are at particular things. You know, so, well, Johnny over here is pretty good with narrow intervals, recognizing them as not so good with wide intervals. And that can be measured by a series of like assignments, a series of exams and tests wherein we get some hard numerical evidence, you know, as to, well, you know, John, you could do a little bit better. You need a little bit more practice with that. And And the reason I say that is because I've observed this, right? Observations, numeric measurement, that kind of thing is very, very helpful. Very, very, very helpful. And in all kinds of ways, even in particular, and I think particularly educating musicians, because scores tell you something. But there's more to it than just numbers. You know, there's more to it than just numbers, right? There's more to life than numbers, right? Or at least I think there's more to life than numbers, right? Liars don't, figures don't cheat, but cheaters can figure. You can manipulate anything. And if you're sufficiently adept with cooking the books and you've got a sufficiently ignorant audience, you can hoodwink just about anybody with glory, 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 numbers, glory, 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 science. Becomes just like, as far as I'm concerned, a religion. That's my rant for this time. Numbers, digits, science. Everything has to be just like a lab. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. There's more to life than just numbers. There's more to it. I just think there's more to it. Anyway, bye.